So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with you got kicked out of Canada, or you want to start with, DEA stuff,
Sure.
or I mean,
Let's go back in the way back when machine. Uh, I was actually hired by a company to go to Canada and work with the Canadian government and the Canadian they call them Mounties, they have this weird looking uniform and everything, to deal with high level issues of cryptocurrency with banks and the legalization of hashish or marijuana for their country, because you had a lot of these people that were, growing, either in hydroponics or just regular farming of cannabis, and using, and selling that cannabis to the government, and they're regulating that, and they're selling that to dispensaries, and then dispensaries are getting high volumes of cash, right? And some banks won't take large volumes of cash at one time. So the idea was to put that in cryptocurrency to take what they consider dirty money, launder that money, and now they've got legal tender. Then they cash out the Bitcoin or whatever they're using, and they've got that. So that was what I was investigating, and we stumbled upon different drug cartels, that were international drug cartels, and all kinds of stuff. We found politicians that were in on this. We found out there was parliament. They have a parliament there. They have in parliamentary government. I don't know if people know that in Canada. Some of those people were involved in it. I mean, and we went to the highest levels. And there were 5 of us, and they basically said, thank you so very much for your work. Your company has your check. You can no longer come in our country, period. Because if these people find out who you are, they're going to kill you, and and it was the same thing when I was investigating the drug cartels, and investigating a lot of stuff in Mexico, that was related to crime, which those are highly classified missions, with the DEA. And when, you're a contractor with some of these companies, and I tell this to students and I tell this to your viewers as well, you have to give up some of your personal rights and some of your personal beliefs for the job. You have to have, it's very hard on you mentally, some of the stuff that you see. It's also very taxing on you physically, because there is stress that's involved, that you're trying to deal with this. And then on top of that, your livelihood, because these people are not necessarily Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and they will have no problems, cutting you off at the head, literally. Like I cannot go to Canada, can't go to Mexico. And according to my NSL and the contract that I have with the DOD and the DOJ, I can't leave the proper 50 states. I can't go to, Mexico, can't go to Canada, can't go to Central America, can't go to South America. There's some places I also, what they call the dirty 30 countries. I can't go to Iran, Beirut, China, Russia, the Baltic states, all those places that you want to vacation, and take your family, that are in the middle of war zones. So, that was just part of being a government military contractor, is that the pay is very, good, and very well. But, when you are a hired cybersecurity analyst, and a cybersecurity administrator, and you've got all this education, there's debt that comes with that education, right? To get those certifications and stuff that I had. And this was a way for me to pay all that off, and it was relatively lucrative, and within 2 years, I paid off my education, which was great. And then everything that I had that I was doing that. But the flip side of that coin is that I'm dealing with people that, have no problem killing you. They are into money laundering, child pornography, they are into gun running, they're into drugs, they are into, counterterrorism, cyber terrorism. I mean, and you have to deal with that, and that's some part of you. And considering this is a 24/7, 365-day, year job, it takes away from your life. It takes away from your family. It takes away from you mentally, and sometimes physically will wear on you. So that was like, one of the reasons why I got kicked out of Canada was that, we investigated all these people, and it went to the highest level, of their government, to these reports that these people, are, committing crimes and are dirty. and it was relatively rough. And I mean, nothing against the Canadians. I think they're great people, love them to death. They're our neighbors to the north, but, I can't come into your country anymore because I worked on this operation back in the way back when machine and did all this stuff. And it was uh, very taxing, took a lot of time, took a lot of effort, took a lot of energy. But after it was all said and done, there were some sacrifices that came with it.
So you also did you mentioned with the DoD, for what you can share, right? Because I'm sure a lot of that is obviously classified as well. But
Oh yeah,
for
it's hideously
areas,
overclassified.
well, yeah, I mean, but that's standard, DoD. Any interesting stories you can share for what you can share, even if you swap out names and stuff like that and places and whatnot, like any kind of things you've experienced. I know in particular you've obviously, in a certain country dealt with some things hitting your body. We'll say it like that. So anything like that that you can
Mhm.
share as far as stories that.
Sure. I was when I was hired as a private military contractor, straight out of college. A little bit of history of me, and the reason why I wear the mask is because there's a lot of great facial recognition software out there, and I've been doxxed by China. They tried to dox me. I've been swatted twice, and the good news is I live in a relatively small, community, and I actually know the police officers. They just showed up at my door and they're like, "What's going on here?" And I'm like, "Nothing." They're like, "Oh, well, we're supposed to be, kicking in your door and breaking in glasses and coming to your house." And I was like going, "Oh, somebody tried to SWAT me." And I was like going, "Oh, that's bad." So, um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I've had to deal with over the years, just because, I'm dealing with some of these actual things right now. When I was doing some of these operations, and it was rough. I mean, it was really, really rough, because I had to, to sacrifice a lot of things when I was dealing with, some of these operations, and even though you're either a remote contractor or you're actually on prem, or at station as they call it, overseas, there's some things that you have to follow. There's certain protocols, some things you can and can't do. And to make a long story short, I was what they call over the green zone or in the red zone. So I was working with special forces, the rangers, and I was working with a Joint Special Operations Command and Joint Cyber Command, as well as the CIA, under contract for, and I was actually attached to them as an attaché, to actually help them to be the guy, what I call the guy in the rear with all the gear, making sure that communications was working, all the different stuff back and forth in between those units and, CENTCOM, which is what is the central command that actually, gives all the information out to the troops and so forth. So that was my what they call MOS, Mission Operational Statement, and I reported to what they call the CAG, Command Operations Group, or Command Administrations Group. So my job was to keep them informed what's going on in the field and so forth. And I was actually attached to some of these people, and I got hurt. I have been shot twice, stabbed 3 times, hit with an IED and a rocket propelled grenade. I've had 7 major surgeries. I am blind in actually my left eye. I lost all my peripheral vision. I had shrapnel go through my face, and I actually had a facial reconstruction surgery. I've also lost fingertips, have scars all over me, and so forth. But that was part of the job. That's part of the risk, and the reward is you get paid very well to do this. And this was me giving back to my country after September 11th. This was me fighting counterterrorism and basically, narco terrorism, because the Taliban are narco terrorists. They grow poppy, which is the derivative that makes heroin, and sell heroin, and for their actual funding of their terrorism. that's how they work. They work no different than a drug cartel. And moving massive amounts of drugs and everything that they do is no different than a logistics operation. So if you imagine this, that's what it is. And it's sometimes, kind of barbaric on the way that they do it, because these warlords come in and they point guns, at these people and say, you're going to either grow all this heroin, or we're just going to come back and chop all your arms off, or we're just going to kill all your villagers. So, they have no other choice. These poor people that, have very lacking in education, that live on like $5 a week, are forced to grow drugs, and harvest drugs for terrorism. And it's horrible. It's absolutely deplorable what they do. And, they basically have set up a logistics operation and launder money through certain banks to be able to buy guns and to fund their terrorism, and it's nothing different than narco terrorism. The same thing that you hear about the drug dealers that are in Mexico, and same thing in the United States. It's a very tight-knit small network. It works very loosely. It's very fluid. Sometimes it's very hard to trace. And then sometimes I had to do that in country, as well as hear from my pen testing lab that I actually have here at my home to track all that, to be able to put together some kind of map or some kind of way of tracking and tracing these people down and how they actually commit their crimes.
So I think people see a lot in the movies, and we'll just kind of focus on cartels, like just comparing to a movie with, again, without getting into specifics, because I know you can't.
Oh yeah.
Is what people see in the movies, is that a watered down version in your opinion? Is that accurate to some extent, or is it
Some of it
totally?
is, some of it isn't. They take artistic liberation with a lot of the stuff that they do. Um, you know, the thing though too is they use a lot of technology that what the good guys use versus what the bad guys use, right? So they hire hackers, they use phone tracking, they have data centers, and they use Google Analytics, and they use, because that's what they're doing. They're shipping massive amounts, tonnage of cocaine through logistics-based systems, either legally or illegally, through ports, airports, tunnels, whatever they can use to get, as they say, the drugs come up and the money and the guns go down. And they use mules. They do all different kinds of stuff to be able to do this. So what you see in the movies, to some extent, is correct, but it's also not as high end as they make it, right? And I see movies where they people are, they're like hackers, they're doing all this kind of stuff. Some of that's true, some of it's not true, but the thing though too is that it's risk and reward, and there's a saying within the cartels is, do you want the gold, or do you want the lead? It's as simple as that. They will pay off people to turn a blind eye, to commit crimes. Same thing is, and if they don't, they'll end up, killing you, your family. You shoot your dog, burn down your house. They pull a full Kaiser Soze. I mean, they go just completely ballistic. They have no problem killing you and hanging you from a bridge to, or from, somewhere, even on a tree, to make an example of you, that that they are in control, and they will kill you because your life to them is zero, and what they're looking for is money, and in a way it is no different than as I tell people, they say the war on drugs, from the DEA. I mean, it's a never ending cycle, and there is some forms that you see in the European model of legalization of this. But you can talk to anybody in the industry, especially with the opioid epidemic that we've had here, that was completely created by Purdue Pharma, and other drug companies, is no different than what a drug cartel does. I mean, no different, and if you look at the oxycodone, Xanax, and fentanyl issues that we actually hear in the United States, we need to really start addressing that, not only as a drug problem, but as a healthcare issue, and that really starts with education education that really starts with helping people in impoverished, neighborhoods and stuff, that this is the only way that they see as an out, is to join a gang and sell drugs and, sell cocaine or sell heroin or sell crack cocaine to be able to make a living. There's got to be a way to change that, within our system inside the United States. And that begins with education. That begins with, being able to get jobs, and then being able to supply what I consider to be the ability of treating these people not as criminals, but as people that have a serious addiction. No different than, a gambling addiction, no different than an alcohol addiction, somebody addicted to coffee or cigarettes, that's trying to quit. The same thing is, they're just doing it at a different level, and they're fighting through, some very major issues, mentally as well as physically, and as well as dealing with the addiction that they have to stop. And that's very, very hard, and it's destroyed friends, that I've had over the years that have gotten heavily addicted to drugs. And I've had family members that, that have been touched by dealing with their not only, legal addictions to like alcohol and so forth with alcoholism, but also dealing with drug addiction as well. So, it touches every part of society. It touches every part of humanity, and hopefully, as I tell people, if you educate and treat this as a healthcare issue as well as a legal issue, and we will be able to hopefully fix this probably within the next 10 years. And that begins with looking at how we classify a lot of these drugs, and looking at how we can create treatment plans to be able to help these people get out of their addiction.
So you touched on it earlier, and you also, you mentioned that with the addiction as well, but the mental side of things. So I just want to touch on, like, you've obviously done a lot of things. A lot of things we're not even going to talk about in this episode, but how did you? I guess, how do you cope? Or is there kind of like a routine? Not to sound too cliche, but like what do you do, having gone through a lot of different experiences, throughout your career? Like what kind of thing might that you do that might be beneficial to someone out there, because not everyone grew up kind of tougher like you or I, and a lot of people that grow up, if they don't grow up tough, they don't necessarily get like that toughness mentally.
Right.
That kind of helps you quite a bit if you've grown up with significant adversity. So, like, for those people out there that, I don't want to call them weak, because I'm not saying anyone's weak, but
No, 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 no,
they
no,
just
no.
didn't have experiences like a lot of us did growing up, so they didn't kind of condition for
Right.
certain scenarios. Like, what
Well,
what kind of advice would you have?
oh, the advice I give people is that the average right now rate of people that come into cybersecurity lasts 5 years. I've been doing this for 28 years. I've been doing this, since forever. I mean, this is all I've ever done. This is all I've ever wanted to do. And when I was in 7th grade, I sat in the front of a Mac, 2E, if you remember those, the old brown boxes, and they had the keyboard integrated within this huge, and I was like, with the green screen, and I was like going, this is the future. This is what I want to do. This is all I've ever wanted to do, was, work with computers and work with technology, because I was like going, this is my calling. It's same thing. It's like some people don't wake up one day and go, hey, I want to be a funeral director. Same thing. People don't wake up and go, oh, I'm going to be a junkie when I grow up. I mean, people, same thing. People have to have a mode and a motivation to be able to get. That's just how our being and psychological being is. And when I got into this, there is a light and a dark side to IT. I mean, there is the dark side, of course, being is that the internet is very cold. It does it. And you've got to have a out. You need to have like a hobby, somebody that you go to that you can spend time with, have an animal or a pet, have friends, a very close knit friend group, to where you can mentally turn all of this crap off. And just decompress. You got to have that outage. If not, the stress that we're under will basically destroy your life. It will. And for example, when I came back from overseas and everything, it took me a year. It took me a year to really wind down and not just be completely nervous all the time and jittery, and to reassociate myself back with my wife and my family and my child, same, and my parents and so forth. I mean, I had a lot of night terrors, high blood pressure. I had gained, lost a lot of weight and then put a lot of weight back on. I wasn't exercising correctly, ended up having kidney stones. And then after all the surgeries and stuff, I developed neuropathy and fibromyalgia, and that really took a huge toll on me, because of, what happened to me in the past versus what I'm doing now. Because, we sit down a lot, we need to be able to get up and stretch and exercise and drink water and get off the Red Bull and get off the monsters and the, gallons of coffee and chocolate that we eat, and I would love for somebody to do a case study on us, in cybersecurity, because I mean, it'll eat you alive, and it will really wear on you, physically and mentally if you don't have some kind of outage. Sports are good. I wish I could do sports. I mean, I walk. I can't run hardly anymore because I've had, a lot of metal put in me and through me, as I tell people. But it's great to be able to just go outside and just enjoy nature, and just forget about the computers and the spreadsheets and all the emails and the phone and everything. So it's one of those things, as I tell people, your life that is online is like basically identity disorder, or associative identity disorder. You have your online persona and everything that you're doing, and oh man, my TikTok and my Facebook and my Twitter life, I'm doing all these great things, blah 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 blah. But in reality, you're sitting behind a computer and you're sad. So it's like you're basically giving a persona of what it is, what your life should be on, and what you're doing online versus the reality that you live in. When you walk away from that keyboard over there, or the keyboard that's in front of me, do I leave that magical world that doesn't really exist on the screen versus the reality that I have to touch and live in? Because I mean, I have a family that needs and wants to be around me, and I have animals that love and unconditionally. I've got cats and dogs, and they love me, and I love spending time with them, and as well as my child. So it's one of those things, and it's also time management, because I mean, we spend a lot of time behind all these computer screens, and we spend a lot of time talking and a lot of time in meetings and a lot of time doing emails, and it goes on and on and on. So you got to have some kind, and I've told this to students, I've told this to, college and universities, is that you got to have some kind of out, um, and something to be able to do to get away from this. If not, you're burning the candles at both ends, and guess what? That light burns as bright as it possibly could be, but it's got the shortest lifespan. So the key thing is I tell people, is to make sure that you, at the end of the day, that's your end of the day. Decompress, go exercise, go spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. Don't get back on your phone. I mean, these screens are, sometimes destroy people. And I mean, we've got children now that have phobias over some of this stuff. Oh, I don't have enough likes, or I don't have enough, and they're stressing out over this stuff. That's crap. That's bullshit. That means nothing in the real world. Your parents care about you, your friends and your family care about you. It doesn't matter how many likes or stars or whatever it is that you get on your phone, because that's not the real reality that we live in. It's a false identity, that you're putting out there. Same thing is, since I do work with the government, we're trying to figure out how to ban TikTok, which is a whole nother issue. Congress has said we're not going to use, this is a social media platform on government computers. So as a cybersecurity analyst, like, okay, how do we go out there and ban a lot of this, social media that is basically doing data aggregation and going to China, who is on basically our new Cold War enemy. We're back in a digital war now, which has been going on pretty much since 1998. against China and Russia and, other, state nations or nation states, however you want to put it, that are aggregating and trying to steal our data. And, it's like, wow, we've got this application that's based on a phone, that's free, that everybody does little dance videos or whatever they're doing. And we have to figure a way out to stop that, on our systems, because we don't want that to be a inlet, or a vector of attack to our systems. So it's very interesting. And has it been stressful? Absolutely. Is it dry? If I had to whiteboard this out and figure out all this stuff out and do all these kinds of things, absolutely. If I've been burning the candle a lot, absolutely. But guess what? We're in the holiday season. We're coming on the beginning of a new year. And it's like, okay, I've got to turn that off, right? And then recycle all of that, anxiety and fear and nervousness and doubt and all that kind of stuff, and switch that into spending time with my family, being full and happy with, my mental health and my physical health, because in this industry, it will wear on you, and it is very dangerous, and we've lost people in our industry, due to self-harm, or them just completely getting out of this and like becoming kung fu. They just walk the earth, they, they end up completely getting out of this industry, and they spend all this time, money, and effort and education to do all this, and then it's like all of a sudden they're like, I just can't handle this anymore. I want to go do something else. I'm going to go like in the basket weaving and go walk the earth, like kung fu, like David Carradine. So it's like and yeah, and you and I are about the same age. So us Gen Xers, we're pretty hardcore, and the newer people that are coming into this are a little bit more, I wouldn't say soft, but they're a little more sensitive, to, what it is that you're having to deal with. And the internet's got a lot of trolls, and there's a lot of trolls out there, people spewing, massive amounts of hatred and stupidity online, and you just got to filter that out, and sometimes it's hard to do. And I warn people a lot, please, please have something else to do when all this stuff gets turned off. You don't want it to just filter back into your mind, and it will just literally eat your soul. So do something else. I stress that a lot, is have something to devote more of your, just about as much more of your time to, as well as you're doing this, to do something else.
So switching topics a little bit, this is actually based on something you told me. We were on a previous call a long time, a year ago or something like that. But
Mhm.
you had gotten a ticket in the U.S., a speeding ticket, and it was kind of an interesting story of that. If you're able to share it on the
Yes,
recording, if not,
the
then that's
most
cool. But
expensive speeding ticket in the world. It's yeah. So I was working undercover, and I got pulled over by a police officer on a bridge, and he's like, "Yeah, you're going 10 miles over the limit and everything." And I had to go to my JAG lawyer and my lawyer and take it to him, and we had to go through this whole process of, and the district attorney's like, "No, this guy's going to show up in court," and they're like, "No, he's not. He's undercover. He's doing this high level investigation. We can't have him come, sit on the, stand, or bring him into court or anything like that." So um, they got my regular lawyer, who is, been a personal friend of mine for years. My JAG lawyer, which is my government lawyer, he showed up. I had two guys in digital camo that were with me when I showed up to the courthouse, as well as, someone of very high rank in the United States military that showed up. And we literally went into court with my little ticket, and they're like, "You stand there, you say nothing." The judge came up and everything and was like, "Oh my God, what in the world is going on here?" He's like, "These guys got a lot of metal on their chest, and they got digital guys in digital camo. And you got these, dressed up lawyers and everything." And the district attorney was like going, "What have I done?" He's like sweating, profusely and everything. He's like, "Oh my God." And they had to clear the court, they had to get everybody out and whatnot, and they closed the doors to make it a closed session and everything. And my lawyers just tore into this poor, district attorney, public prosecutor, and he probably wouldn't sit down for a month. So they took the ticket to the judge. The judge literally says, "Okay, pay the fine and the court cost, and I don't ever want to see you here ever again. He goes, I don't know who and whom you are, but you are connected to the devil upon high. So just please leave, So that was, and the thing though too was, is like, I got the finger from the government. Don't do that again, because I was going 10 miles over the limit, but it was paid, and they had to seal the documentation. They had to wash the record, so that it didn't become public, because that's a public, proceeding and whatnot, because they didn't want somebody to try to track me down. So, I mean, it was a whole mess of stuff. And after the operation was done and over, and we did, basically the tabletop and the reading of that, they said, well, the only bump in the road that we had was the speeding ticket. Everything else went off without a hitch.
Are you able to talk about the serial killer one,
Yeah.
or
So yeah, I investigated a serial killer for a state, in a state agency, and he was actually in the process, and we caught him in the process of trying to lure people into his truck. He was a basically considered to be a serial killer, and we had found out that all of these prostitutes, as well as women that were hitchhiking, and just regular bystanders that were at gas stations, were being abducted and being killed, and their bodies were being dumped on the side of the highway. So we actually investigated, him, and we found out that we tracked him down from the 18-wheeler, because he was an actual 18-wheel driver, and he drove big rigs, and he was, capturing and killing these women, dismembering them, and then driving them around and dropping their body parts and dropping off, them in different parts of 3 different states. So it was a long, hard process to digitally track his footprints down. And then once we figured out his pattern, we were able to arrest him and prosecute him. And the district attorney, I worked with them and testified about his geolocations and where he was and how that was actually all done. And then after that was actually done, that was put into evidence. I did testify in court about that. And then once I testified in court, and that kind of sealed the deal for him, and he actually went to death row and was executed.
sucks for him, but nice that nice that you call him and
Oh yeah,
got got that guy.
it was almost a 2-year investigation. So I mean, it was very, it was intense, because um, even though they were prostitutes, a human life is still human life, and I still value human life, especially if they're innocent. And some of these people were mothers, and some of these people were somebody's daughter, somewhere down the line, and they didn't deserve, what actually had happened to them. So I'm kind of glad, that I was able to participate, in that exercise to help to try to track him down and try to, gather as for him to face trial.
So any additional interesting stories you want to share, again, for what you can discuss?
Well, actually, the newest thing that we've actually been working on is I have a GoFundMe, and we're creating a hacker box. And that hacker box is going to basically be used as an educational tool, as well as a demonstration tool, and a useful tool. And what it is basically a Pelican case that opens up, and it's going to have 2 Galaxy Tab A tablets in it. They're both going to have Kali Linux on it, and it's going to have a keyboard, a mouse, power supply, and some of the Wi-Fi pineapples, a lot of the rubber ducky, a lot of the stuff that's actually involved with a router and a switch, and some of the Hack 5 actual materials and stuff will be put in that, with some other equipment as well. And it's going to be a mobile lab, and it's going to have this Pelican case we're actually going to have to drill into and put in antennas and all kinds of really kind of cool stuff. And we're doing it at 100% as a donation, so I will definitely send you the link, and you can actually put that in there. We're trying to raise about $1,500, for this, so that we can take it to schools and we can take it to universities, and do demonstrations to show people, what it is to be an ethical hacker, what it is to be, someone that works in counter surveillance, counterintelligence. What do you do with your OSCP? How do these things, if you want to become a pen tester or work for a red team or a blue team, and you want to do all this kind of James Bondish kind of stuff that people talk about, and help bust cyber criminals. Well, you got to be able to show them, right? Like you could tell them all day long, but like if you don't get your hands into it, I mean, you have to really get your hands into this stuff. You got to get your fingers on the keyboard and the mouse and be able to, to do these kind of things. Like, how does Wireshark work, and how does, OWASP, Zap 10, how does all these things work? How does, how am I dealing with Kali Linux and Parrot OS and, Linux, and, how do I, deal with, how do I read code? Simple stuff. And we're just going to set up a little demo lab. One is an attacker, one is a defender, and kind of show, in a lab-based environment that's mobile, how to do this, and have a little router and switch in it, and it's like, hey, here's, how these things plug in and do all this kind of stuff. And these are done on tablets, but you can really do this in the computer world a lot, and server world a lot different and also the cloud, based environment as well, on how you can do these certain things, and how do you actually educate yourself to get the certifications that you need, because someone has to be able to inspire you. Someone has to be able to light that flame, into someone, to say, like, I want to work in cybersecurity, but what kind of type of cybersecurity is, I want to work in. We get people all the time in this industry. I want to work in cybersecurity. Okay, what type of cybersecurity? There's a plethora to choose from. And this is going to be a demo box that we're going to be able to show in this hacker box on, some of the different aspects of what you want to do. Like if you want to do network security, that's awesome. If you want to work in OT cybersecurity, that's even better, because we need people to work in infrastructure, So it's a really good way to demonstrate, education, and a good way to show how you could make one of these. It's not necessarily me making it not only for demo purposes, but we're also going to be documenting the process from people that are giving to the GoFundMe and also sending in donations, how you can build one of these little labs, for you to be able to use for under $1,500.
Excited to see that. Yeah, and the link will be so I'll put this out on YouTube. So the link will be below the video here for everyone to check out the GoFundMe.
Awesome. So we're going to spend, the whole year 2023, building this thing, and then be able to take it to universities, hopefully be able to take it to a couple of cons, and then people will see that, from when they've donated to, what this will be used for.
So I have to ask, where'd you buy the mask at? Like, for people that might want to get masks like that to make conferences more interesting.
Amazon is your friend.
Nice.
Amazon is your friend, so it's same thing as, like, I in my actual office here that I've got 4 firewalls and 6 proxies, that I go through in a rolling IP address that changes, every 30 minutes. So it's like, I tell people, it's like, there's a lot of money that you have to spend to get into a lot of this. I mean, a lot of this equipment that you see behind me, it wasn't for free. So you gotta spend money to make money, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head of mentioning. I see so many people. I want a cybersecurity job. Like, what? what the heck do you want to do? It's and it can be tough when you're starting out, because I mean, a lot of stuff seems interesting, right? Like, oh, I want to be a hacker. Oh, this, the network security side, or working as a SOC analyst.
Right.
That's cool.
And you and I've discussed this before. What you see in, the movies and stuff like that is bullshit compared to what you really have to do. I mean, it's like, I see the
Wait a
movie
minute.
Hacker.
You mean like neon lights don't go off and cool sounds and stuff like that when I hack?
No, not here. Not. I mean, I've been doing this forever, and I mean, I've never heard any of that. And you see these people pounding out code and doing all this kind of stuff, and like moving satellites around and yada yada yada. I'm like, no, this is not. That's not. That's the movies. The reality is, it's not as super duper sexy as they make it on screen. It's And the thing though too is there's no lone gunman, and that's where I see education dropping the ball, when it comes down to dealing with, people trying to get into this industry. When we're especially in public education, you're taught, there's only one answer. Well, guess what? There's no such thing as one answer. There's multiple different answers. You have to work alone, and be the lone wolf kind of man, Superman savior. I work in groups. I mean, even though I'm in here by myself, I'm constantly talking to team members, so it's a group effort, and the other thing though too in education is like, well, you have to be able to follow the rules. Bad guys don't follow the rules at all. You have to have what I call outside the box thinking, and that is what I basically term it as, abstract forward thinking. You have to think very abstractly. You have to think a lot forward, like 3 steps ahead, like a chess player, and we're taught in public education that we're all siloed into this one single answer, and it has to be right and it's standardized. Well, guess what? None of this that I deal with is. None of it is. So, there's a very big misconception from what you're doing in education, but then when you get into higher education, it's completely flip-flopped, right? So, you go to a college or a university or you start working in this industry, it's not what you've been taught originally. It's completely different, right? You're working in teams, you're having to do different types of reports. There's a certain amount of follow-up that you have to do. There's no such thing as a singular right super duper answer that's going to fix everything all at once, right? There's multiple different factors of attack that you have to look at. So basically you got to look at the big picture. It's a full panoramic picture versus this small little snapshot that you're originally taught.
So any additional stories, from the clutches of death, where you've escaped or whatever, but any additional stories, like have you been hacking the moon or anything like that?
No, not really. I mean, and the reason why, a lot of the stuff that I had to do was sanctioned by the government, and it was approved by someone either legally, to for me to do this, and I tell people it's like, if you go out there and you do bad things, there were either two things that happened when I started doing this in the 90s. Either you got away with it or you got in prison. It was simple as that. I mean, and those rules still apply today. If you're doing black hat kind of work and it's not sanctioned by a company and government, and there's tons of NDAs and licensing and lawyers involved, for you to be able to go out there and attack someone, and you better have all your P's and Q's and stuff, and all your, I mean, you got to have, something to CYA, cover your ass, to make sure that everything is done. If not, you're going to jail. I mean, if they catch you, I mean, you're looking at serious amounts of prison time, if you don't flip and cut a deal, with the district attorney or, law enforcement. For the reason being is that, our cybersecurity laws are very ancient. They are hardly ever updated. And what they consider to be legal versus illegal, there's still a lot of gray area, I mean, because we're not really writing a lot of laws that protect IT and OT assets, that are in play. The example I give right now is that, people have started, in the OT world, operational technology, SCADA-based technology, they're going very low end. They're taking guns and going to South Carolina and shooting up power facilities with guns, and it's taking out 30,000 people like that. Boom. If you look at historically, if you look at the Metcalf attack in California, they almost took out the entire West Coast and Silicon Valley just by taking oil drums, rolling them into a power facility, network facility, and shooting them and almost exploding and taking out an internet node. So we're seeing a lot more now domestic terrorism, here in the United States, that's sometimes attached. And I'm very be political. And when I say be political, I call blame political. I blame both parties, so I'm kind of like in neutral here in the middle. So I blame, the right and the left, for all of their things they should or should not have done over the years. Like, I wish net neutrality would become, a major subject again. I would love to see that brought back to the forefront. I'm glad to see that infrastructure, in the United States is finally being looked at as, part of things are being ingrained for security now, and we need more OT cybersecurity people to be able to help power plants, nuclear reactors, water treatment facilities. And these people pay pretty good. I mean, they pay pretty good, for the industry, but it's hard to get someone that's in, let's say electrical engineering to say, hey, would you like to also get into cybersecurity? Because I mean, electrical engineer, yeah, they're making six figures, but over here you make way much more, like 20 to 30% more if you've got cybersecurity attached to it. And this industry that I work in IT and OT, especially in dealing with red teaming and blue teaming and all the other colors that you want on the rainbow of Skittles you want to throw at it, is that a lot of people that are aging out, they're retiring, and we need more people in education to be able to push the narrative to get people into cybersecurity. But they got to understand the pitfalls and the stuff that comes with it, because we need people not only in IT, we need a lot of people in OT. I mean, we're in the hundreds now, because people are retired, COVID hit, people decide to leave their jobs, retire early. So I call it the dirty wizard syndrome. They're the old gray haired, I did this back in Fortran and punch card days. They're leaving, they're retiring out, and they've taken all that knowledge base with them. And, we now need people to come in and fill that gulf and start applying some things and the new things that they've learned to some of that older based technology, and some of those older based systems. And change is hard, and it's expensive, and it's people don't like change. They want safety and security and low risk, and they want things to be, standardized and blah, blah. Well, in this world of cybersecurity, it's never that way. It's just not, it changes so rapidly, so quick. It's very fluid, as I tell people. It's like water. You can touch it, but it'll still go through your hands. I mean, it's very fluid, because we see viruses and we see malware and ransomware stuff from 10 years ago that's been rehashed and comes back again, right? We also see that affecting, the power grid and water treatment facilities and nuclear and, energy distribution and the internet. I mean, the physical internet's now being attacked, right? So that's kind of scary as well, because we need people to be able to go in there and be able to protect OT and some of those SCADA-based assets, as well as some of those IT assets. That's what I'm seeing now. So if you want to put me on the books for 2023, my predictions are this: we're going to see a lot more stuff attack the cloud, or just, I don't even like using the word cloud, distributed computing, right? Because it's just your computer somewhere the fuck else. It's all it is. It's your server just in Amazon's network somewhere else, a virtual machine or physical machine. It's not, in the cloud. It's not flying above you, as I tell my mother. It's, it's just your server or computer over there. That's it. That's all it is. So you're going to see more attacks probably on cloud. You're going to see a lot more attacks on infrastructure, especially what they call BAS, building automation systems. So you're going to see people holding, cities with their OT assets, as well as hospitals and medical. That's going to be a big, huge attack, vector that's coming up. Power and energy, of course. And then we're going to see a lot more ransomware that's going to be hitting corporations. And a lot of that now, as I just read a paper about, is not going to be insurable by cybersecurity insurance if they don't take certain steps to protect it. And we do have some new laws that are coming out on the books that's going to make it to where businesses are very accountable for your data, and it used to be, oh, we're too big to fail. Now it's, well, you might be too big to fail, but you can still go to jail. That's how they're looking at it. I would not want to be a CISO right now, or a virtual CISO, because they are so responsible for data loss and data integrity and what they could go to jail now. You now seeing people at the C level, the conference room level, that are the higher ups that now are 100% responsible, and they can now, looking at jail time and massive fines for data breaches, ransomware, malware, attacks on their OT systems, and they're also facing major and deep audits. So we're going to see 2023 in the cybersecurity world, in the high performance computing world, cloud-based security world. We're going to, and also in infrastructure, physical infrastructure and virtual infrastructure. Those are going to be the big main targets that we're going to start seeing be hit by nation states, rogue actors, domestic terrorism or domestic terrorists, as well as what they consider to be the lone wolf, cells that come out of a lot of the Middle East. And we're going to start seeing a lot of that within the next year. And it is very scary. And we are now at the point to where we've had a lot of planned obsolescence, for a lot of our older stuff that's, having to go away because it's getting too old. And we're going to have to spend a lot of money to do change mastery of getting stuff into newer equipment. You can only, using that Celeron D, hate to tell you, it's time to upgrade, and that hurts. That hurts a lot. You just can't use something for 20 to 20, 30 years. There is an EOL, and we're seeing a lot of stuff that's going to be EOL within the next year that's going to have to change out. So, and that's just across the board because our infrastructure and our data infrastructure needs it.
Any final thoughts or predictions or advice that you would share with someone watching?
Yeah. If you want to do what I do for a living, I mean, because I am a certified ethical hacker, pen tester, forensic investigator, and auditor. I'm a professional bad guy, for companies. I do all different kinds of engagements, from audits, down to certified ethical hacking, pen testing, mobile device testing, and so forth. You need to pick the flavor of what it is that you want to do, and gear your education and your need and your want, to be able to do this. As I tell people, the money will come, right? You got to pay your dues. You just got to pay your dues. You're gonna, I tell people that are coming straight out of college and they want to be at the C level and make all this kind of money and blah, blah. I'm like, look, you're going to start off as a SOC analyst. I hate to tell you this. You're going to start off at, doing tickets, and I mean, you're not going to just walk into that position. If that you do walk in that position, you're either being set up to fail, or you're going to be set up as a target, for a outage, for something that's going to be very, very bad and costly, and now can cost you to go to jail. So, those, people that don't have the experience of pushing the keys and whatnot, and knowing the lingo and knowing the languages and knowing the application and the tools, they're going to pay. And now that, we're finding out that, oh, we don't need these 20 tool packages to do one single thing. We only need, maybe 3 or 4, so people are starting to get lean and mean, and what I call the vendor sprawl is about to stop. People are just sick of it. They're just sick of dealing with it. Oh, it's a data pool. Now it's called a data lake. Now it's called a data pipe. It's just your damn data. I mean, let's cut to the chase here. You can use all these buzzwords all day long, and I think people in our industry are just getting burned out by it, and they're sick of getting promised this whiz bang awesome tool that will do this stuff, and it doesn't do what they originally said it would do. And they've paid all this money, and they've paid all this infrastructure costs, they've paid all this change mastery, and they've updated, and they've done all this stuff, and it still doesn't work, right? And I see a lot of these companies that, I mean, I have no problem naming, that are going to get their dues. And if you want to get into this, you need to really be aware of those pitfalls. Okay, first off, You know, that you gotta really be afraid of what I call the vendor pitfalls, and the false promises that sometimes come with it. But I'm not saying that all vendors are bad. There's some great tools and great packages and great salespeople out there and great marketing people that do a great job with some of the stuff that do it. You just got to know what those things are, right? And how do you get that? Experience, right? I can't give that to you. I can't crack your brain open and pour what my knowledge into your brain and you just be able to do it, right? And I can't read your mind. I just can't stick my hand out and go, yes, I will do this for you. So it's communication, right? So it's education, communication, it's also getting your hands in this, and you're going to fail. I fail all the time. That didn't work. Okay, crap. Let's go back and what do we learn? And let's try something again. So, it's just, that's why they call it computer science. There's a mode and a method to this, right? So, it doesn't work all the time the way that sometimes it should be. And that's, and you have to learn from that failure. And I tell people all the time to get in this industry, it's hard. It's really, really hard. You got to dedicate your life to this physically and mentally. We've talked about today. It will make a strain on your body and your personal relationships. So guess what? You need to have some kind of outage, to be able to do that. Make sure that it's not drugs, please. Kids, drugs are bad. So, Adderall, it ain't nothing but meth, as I tell people. And be passionate about it. If you want to do this, go do it, right? Get the education and put forth the effort. No one in this industry is going to hand it to you. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just, you got to learn by failure and experience and just, really, really learning and being mentored by the older people like me that have been doing this forever. I mean, we started off with modems and now we're at high-speed network. I mean, high-speed internet like we've never seen. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. We started off with, horrible processors, it was Xeon processors and Intel processors. Now we have, I saw the other day, a 96 core processor that's hyper threaded, that can run 256 gigs of RAM. I remember when we were dealing with megabytes, and now we got solid state hard drives. I remember when jump drives came out. I've been doing this, since the early 90s, and I'll never forget it, in 1998. I mean, I thought the world had changed when I saw Toast and it burned the first 4-speed, DVD. I was like, this is world changing. Because in 1 year we went from 3.25-inch floppies to zip disk to jazz drives to burning the first CD-ROMs. And I was like going, my God, in a year, look what we've accomplished. I mean, that is unreal, and at the time I was working with the Apple G3s and the G4s came out, and then we had the Intel Pentium 4 came out that year. And I was like going, oh my God, this is extreme. And that's when we started really seeing the hacking community start using hardware, software hacking to be applied into software hacking and into really starting to see coding really start to make a jump, and network administration to really become a thing. Because it used to be take the switch out, plug up the stuff, let it rock and roll. Flat network. That doesn't hardly exist anymore. If it does exist, you need to go change it out, because guess what? It's no different than a hub, as I tell people. So the world at that time was a lot more simpler, but it was a lot more chaotic, and now we've got things where it's very complicated, but sometimes we need the most simplest answer. One thing is that I would highly recommend though too is people need to read more, get their head out of social media, and coulda, woulda, shoulda done this. As I sell you, and as I told my staff, you sell wood to me, I won't listen to you. Well, we would like to do this. We would or could, should have done that. Would. Don't sell me wood, sell me an answer. As I tell actually, I've got 5 people that are on my red team. As I tell them, I was like, I don't care if you're hot pink, purple plaid, reptile person, he, she, it, sexual, gay, transsexual, bisexual, bipolar, whatever you are. I don't care. Can you fix the hole in the firewall right now? That's all I want you to do. I mean, don't care about your acronyms or your nouns or anything like that. I need you to be able to do the task that I assigned to you. Do you have the skill set to be able to do that? If not, you're going to be sucking your thumb in your cube, or at your house under a desk, sucking your thumb, wishing that you would die in the fetal position, because I need you to be able to do these things for me. Can you do them? Yes or no? And if you don't play the card of fake it till you make it. You can either do it or you don't. In my world, it's either yes or no. There's no gray area. And if you don't know, ask. We'll be glad to help you. The hacker community is very informational. We have a lot of information, and we love to help people. We are very, free with a lot of that knowledge sometimes, especially depending on whom you're working with, to be able to help you with your problem. Like if you don't know subnetting and networking, I'm not the best at it. I know kind of how it works, but I got this guy over here that really knows it better than me, and I'm going to soak up all that knowledge that he knows about how to do it. So if I see a problem, I'll be able to fix it, and I can probably go to him and he'll probably help me get the answer, or get the fix done right. So, as I tell people in this industry and people that want to do these things, cut the BS, just cut it. I mean, I'm at that point in my career. It's like, look, I can tell you when you're feeding me crap, and what you're saying is bullshit. We really need to start focusing in on what the real problems are, and then how do we fix them, right? Because the bad guys are really going to use that to affect us, to affect the company. And now, since we're dealing with the physical world with a lot of these attacks, it can kill you. Uh, if I turn off, the heavy water and the filtration and the ability to move, stuff in and out of a nuclear reactor and heat those rods up, boom, you've got a Chernobyl-like event, right? If I can't keep those fans circulating water and I can't keep that heavy water to be able to keep those cooling rods from overheating, and it's a nuclear reactor, you got disaster. You got, Chernobyl-like effect that affects almost the entire world. And guess what? There are 53 nuclear reactors in the United States, and they're very vulnerable to cyber attack because somebody decided down the line, let's plug these damn things into the internet. Well, that's a bad idea. Same thing. Why do you need to have your toaster, your microwave, your refrigerator, as a digital device? I have none of that. Or home automation. Well, I don't understand that. Are you that lazy? I mean, seriously, I mean, I'm at that point in my age. It's like, I do not want my coffee pot on the goddamn internet. I don't need a screen in my, refrigerator telling me I'm out of milk, uh, it's ridiculous to me. So as I tell people, those things now are being put on the internet, and those devices are now being on there, and now we got viruses for them. We got people that are trying to attack those things, and that impedes on your life. And especially when you're in a situation to where if you have a long time power outage due to weather or inclement weather or natural disaster, that affects you, and that's very bad. That's a bad day, and as I tell people, hopefully within this next upcoming year, we're going to see some of the errors of our ways, but I also see there's a lot of invention that's coming out. There's a lot of new stuff on the horizon, a lot of new technology on the horizon, a lot of new education on the horizon, and a lot of new stuff that's really, really super duper interesting that I want to be able to get my hands into and that I want to know about. But that turns into me educating myself and learning about those things and people in those industries to kind of get the education and stuff that I want. So pursue your passions, and this is like I've said this 3 times today, in this is that I knew that I wanted to do this at an early age, even though it's cost me physical and mental damage and it's cost me almost my life a couple times. I still want to do it. I'm still passionate about it. I'm still passionate about sharing information and making things and doing things, and doing my HackerBox, project to educate people and to keep people enthused into this, and get the buzzwords bullshit out of it and really get your hands into the technology, and can you do it? and will you do it, and find those different aspects of what you want to do. And that all begins with the same thing: is do you have the passion, and the will, the sheer will to do something like this job?